The lake was nearly flat, a dark blue sheet stretching toward the mountains. A small boat moved quietly across the water, cutting through the early morning haze. The man at the wheel knew this lake well enough to trust its patterns. Boat wakes widened, softened, and disappeared. But this was different. Ahead of him, the water began to rise. A long disturbance moved across the water, as if something large was traveling just below the surface. For a moment, the man at the wheel froze. His fingers trembled over the controls. His eyes darted across the fog-covered water, searching for a shape that never fully appeared. Then he grabbed the wheel. The engine screamed, and the boat snapped toward shore, slicing over the same quiet surface that had just risen in front of his eyes. Behind him, the lake smoothed itself flat again. Whatever had moved beneath the water had not disappeared. It had slipped back into the dark. For generations, Lake Tahoe has been the backdrop for postcard-worthy vacations. In the winter, Tahoe becomes one of the most famous ski destinations in America. In the summer, the whole place changes. The beaches fill up, boats crowd the marinas, kayaks and paddleboards move across water so clear it almost feels unreal. And that's the strange thing about Tahoe. It's beautiful in a way that makes it feel safe. But the lake itself tells a different story. It is enormous, over 20 miles long, 12 miles wide, with 70 miles of shoreline. And beneath all that blue, at its deepest point, Lake Tahoe reaches more than 1,600 feet. That makes it the second deepest lake in the United States, deep enough to hide a skyscraper. That depth changes the way the lake feels. The water is crystal clear near the shore, but farther out, it turns darker. And people around Tahoe have always known that coldness. For decades, the lake has carried stories, something seen from boats, docks, beaches, and hotel wharfs. Long before anyone gave it a name, newspapers were already calling it something else, a monster. And by the 1880s, those stories were not just being whispered around the lake, they were being printed. By September of 1883, the whispers had a headline, Lake Tahoe's Monster. One Tuesday evening, a group of guests had gathered on a wharf and were looking out across the lake. According to the report, the surface was quiet, when suddenly an enormous head rose from the darkness. Its eyes described as bright enough to resemble locomotive headlights staring back from the water. The newspaper described something large enough to look like an island lifting out of the lake. Then the shape slipped under again, leaving the people on the wharf staring at empty water. By the next day, the story had spread around Tahoe. People watched from different points along the lake, hoping the creature would show itself again. Around that same period, a Carson fisherman reportedly made a $100 bet that he could spear the thing within a month. Now the creature was not just something to fear from shore. It was something someone believed could be hunted. But nothing was dragged from the lake. The shape stayed below, and the people above kept watching. The next year, the mystery surfaced again, and two witnesses, Captain Pauman of the steamer Todd Goodwin and a Mr. Robinson of the Glenbrook Hotel, described in detail the thing that they saw, a fish monster nearly 20 feet long, with a massive dorsal fin rising from its back like a shark. The wharf sighting had been enormous and strange, something rising in the dark like an island. But a dorsal fin gave the animal a body people could picture moving through the water. Boats crossed the lake looking for it. Hotels brought visitors to the shore to hopefully catch a glimpse. By then, watching was no longer enough. The owners of a schooner and several fishing boats prepared to go after it. But time after time, the boats came back without a body, without a trophy, and without an answer. The creature stayed below, and the lake kept getting deeper around the story. In 1897, newspapers carried the account of Icy Kogan, a well-known San Francisco man who had been one of the early settlers along Lake Tahoe's west shore. His story went back to November of 1865. Kogan had gone hunting with his dog near the creek bottoms that emptied into Tahoe. Then the woods around him sprang to life as animals of all kinds swept past him, all running hard through the timber, escaping something from deeper in the woods. Kogan's dog began to howl before bolting for home, leaving him alone. The forest settled, and then he heard it. Something large was forcing its way through the timber. Kogan climbed into a large pine for safety and couldn't believe what he saw. He described an enormous head, black shining eyes, a dark back, and a reddish-yellow belly. As it moved, small trees snapped beneath its body. Rocks were shoved aside. A serpent-like creature slid through the forest toward the water. Fear froze him in place until it passed. When he finally climbed down, he measured the distance from where he had been hiding to where the tail had reached. According to Kogan, the full length was about 600 feet with a head 14 feet wide. The newspapers ran with it. Another paper printed an illustration of the thing moving through the trees, with Kogan clinging to the branches above it. Lake Tahoe's creature had become more than a shape in the water, and once people saw it that way, Tahoe itself looked different. Not just cold and deep, but big enough to hold something that had been hiding there for decades. Long before the creature had a name, Lake Tahoe already had a monster story. The descriptions changed over time, but the setting never did. Deep water, uneasy witnesses, and something large moving beneath the surface. Maybe they were different creatures. Maybe different mistakes. Maybe different stories that all sank into the same legend. In the 1980s, Bob McCormick gave the Lake Tahoe monster a family-friendly makeover with a children's book and a name: Tahoe Tessie. The legend became easier to package, but a name did not answer the older question. What were people seeing? A fish? A serpent? A shadow moving across one of the deepest lakes in America? Some stories may have had simple explanations. Others never did, and maybe that is why the legend survived. Not because every witness saw the same thing, but because each one came back with the same feeling. They had looked out across the water, and something had looked back.